I thank you for the invitation to speak at this 150th anniversary celebration of the Delaware Conference. I still have a copy of the 100th anniversary program held in 1965, as well as photographs of all the folk who were at that closing session. I think Herb Palmer and I are the only clergy in that picture still living. I think. Okay. I'm pleased that the written history of the Delaware Conference is growing. It's growing. I see so many people are doing things and bringing history. I've taught various sessions and written history papers on the Delaware Conference then. In 2010, I received a brief, colorful history, and that's just what the lady is talking about, written by Reverend David Brown. And it was just so wonderful that I just learned 2 days before coming here that the book was actually published. I was about to say that it will be published soon. But thank God it goes. This spring, I transfer from my files the funeral service bulletins of both Delaware Conference ministers and laypersons which I had collected over the years. I've collected this from the Eastern Pennsylvania Annual Conference, and they're already sent to the African Methodist Heritage Center. When I call the preacher's name, will you just raise your hand, or you can say whatever, in the Philadelphia, in this district? Okay. 1, a celebration of the life of Reverend Daniel Lyman Rideout, 1898-1982. That's our lines, that's where he served. How many of you remember? Okay. All right. Dennis Fletcher, Tenile United Methodist Church, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and an executive in the National Division of the Board of Global Ministries. All right, there you go. Bishop Noah Watson. Yes, Asbury United Methodist Church in Atlantic City, but of course he came here as well. Okay, keep going, just bring him up. Claude A. Edmonds, 1930, 2007. Okay, Tindley Temple. John Wesley Coleman. All right. National Division. I'm saying these are not only parts of people, but there are boards in the Methodist Church. So, John was with the National Division. George Henry Uten from Tioga United Methodist Church, Philadelphia. He was later elected to the General Board of Church and Society in Washington, D.C. Clayton Hammond, Union Memorial Church, Darby, Pennsylvania. Come on, that's my cousin. Later, he was elected as an Associate General Secretary in the Mission on Religion and Race of the UMC. Marion Ballard, 1931, minister of Tindley Temple. Also my minister in Berlin. Oh boy. Well, I do plan to send to the Methodist Archives, and I've already returned Reverend Ballard's things about 2007. It's so wonderful what you read. And he's a man who had sermons, written. Not many of us would write our sermons, and they're all there in the archives. I plan to send to the archives various books, however, which I've collected regarding the life and ministry of Charles Albert Tindley. I have many books, and I had them I don't tell you how I got them. Incidentally, about Charles Tindley, I was born in Berlin, only a few miles from his birthplace, just down the road. And so when you see the people in that church in Berlin singing the songs, oh my gosh, they know it and they remember it. And a couple of years ago, Herbert Palmer and I met with the family of William C. Jason, Jr., who had gathered and written 800 pages of history about the Delaware Annual Conference. The family was willing to transfer these treasured history in order to publish a book. Herb and I, with Bishop Woody White, president of the African American Methodist Heritage Center, met with the General Commission on Archives and History, and it was determined that a book would be published using this historical information, and I'm happy to hear again. Now let me move to a more historical portion of the Delaware Conference. The Delaware State and eastern shore of Maryland and Virginia. Part of this, I'm going to speak this. Many of these preachers that I've just went, they were all in Philadelphia. And I'm going down now to the eastern shore, okay? Let me now move. The early preachers came from England. Woo. And the early Methodist Church included both free and slave members who gathered in the balconies of white churches and also at camp meetings. John Wesley's thought on slavery has been assessed by many historians as the most far-reaching treatise ever written against slavery. When he was 85 years old, John Wesley wrote, "Go in the name of God and in the power of his sight, till even American slavery, the vilest that had ever been seen, shall vanish away before it." That was John Wesley. The early Methodist preachers in the United States rode with evangelistic fervor to the frontier and other isolated places to preach a gospel of salvation to both whites and blacks. These evangelists and the early position of the Methodist Church was opposed to slavery. It was good news and plain enough for everyone to understand. These early preachers, if they had slaves, were required to free them, and church members were admonished to set them free. The organization of the Methodist Church enabled slaves to be licensed as local preachers and later as traveling preachers. Black Harry Hoosier was uneducated, but he became the most excellent preacher for both black and white churches. Other preachers, in cooperation with the local people, organized Methodist churches within their communities. Slaves attended these churches, but they also left their homes and traveled to northern cities, especially, and as I'm saying, I'm taking it home particularly on the eastern shore, especially Philadelphia, where they knew that they would be free with Methodists who were building their own churches. One slave, 2 miles away from my home in Berlin, Maryland, left the farm and escaped all the way to Canada and vowed he would never return to the United States. And he didn't. He became a Canadian citizen, and he was the leader of a group that built a Methodist church in Canada. That was a man 4 miles from where I was born. The task of building and organizing churches on the Eastern Shore was not easy. The Reverend Frost Pullitt was appointed to establish a church in Pocomoke City, Maryland. And when he arrived, white people told him that they did not want religion preached in their town and warned him of the consequences if he did not leave the town. Well, Reverend Frost responded, "You may not see Frost again, but you sure won't see Pullitt again." I thought I'd get a laugh out of that one. You heard it again? Yeah. He said, "You may not see Frost again, but you sure won't see Frost Pullitt again." All right. In Laurel, Delaware, there was Reverend Joshua Brinkley was confronted by a gang of white men who ordered him out of the county, and they said if he was caught again, they would lynch him. And later that same evening, a white Methodist preacher rescued him from the gang. as they were close to hanging him. In Somerset County, several black churches, this is in Maryland, black churches were burned. When the Delaware Conference was formed in 1864, there were only 30 churches, and most of them were on the eastern shore of Maryland. 16 in Delaware, in Maryland, 6 in Delaware. New Jersey had 6, and only 2 churches in Philadelphia, or from Philadelphia. But it was good. Following the end of the Civil War, there was a rapid increase in the number of churches. Not only were churches constructed, they were also in mission. Children received education in the local churches, and the Princess Anne Academy in Princess Anne, Maryland, was established first to educate children at a high school level. Later, it became a college because my mother was born in Virginia, and there was no school except for just an elementary school, and she had to go up the part of the Princess Anne, and that's where the Methodist Church gave her a high school education. Later, it became a fully accredited Methodist college, and many preachers, teachers, and other leaders graduated from there. The Methodist Church is there. In 1939, the state of Maryland purchased the college, and it is now the University of Eastern Shore. Similarly, the Morgan State University in Baltimore was founded and supported by the churches of the Delaware and Washington Annual Conference. That also is one of the great universities that's emerging in this eastern shore, not shores, but in our eastern states. Let me share with you some of my family's involvement with Methodism. We have been able to trace the Waters family back to 1777. My great-grandmother, Harriet Waters, died in 1890. Her obituary was written by the Reverend Jacob C. Dunn of the Princess Anne Academy. It was the first printed obituary for a member of the Waters family. And it states that in the 14th year of her age, she was soundly converted to God at a camp meeting on Deal Island. And within the Waters family, 3 preachers were ordained in the Delaware Conference between 1900 and 1954, namely John Waters, Littleton Waters, Samuel Waters, and literally me. That's me. So that's 4 preachers in this one family. 4 women in the Waters family, 2 of them who were my aunts, and they married Methodist preachers. John Colburn, David Hargis, Kelly Jackson, Augustus Chancey. 2 Waters women were delegates to the annual conference, and another, Hattie Hargis, was a delegate to the National Board of the Women's Society for Christian Service. Not just the annual, but they were going beyond the annual and working into the general church. In closing, let's not forget great contributions by the laity who have been in mission in their local churches and in the annual conference. I remember well Hallie P. Johns, William C. Jason, and others. But it was not until the 1990s and I learned about the life of a man by the name of Stephen Long. Does anybody remember that name ever? Probably not. For me, he stands alone, really, for his enduring contribution to the education of African American youth in Worcester County, Maryland. As a teacher and superintendent in Worcester County, he was outspoken about the poor educational opportunities for African American students and the need for changes in the policies and practice. And he did make changes happen. He was heavily involved in his community, the local church, and the Delaware Conference. He even gave his life for this cause because a local white farmer had 2 black youths from an orphanage working on his farm. And when Stephen Long interviewed, saying that he would send the boys to school. The farmer was supposed to send them. But when Stephen Long intervened, he should send the boys to school. The farmer was so angry that he retaliated by shooting Stephen Long on the street, killing him in front of his daughter in September 1921. More than 2,000 people attended Long's funeral, and the Delaware Annual Conference recorded a tribute to him in the minutes of their annual meeting in the Atlantic City. A more recent educator, Harrison Dwayne Whittington from Crisfield, Maryland, graduated from Morgan State College in 1952, and we were classmates. He returned to Crisfield to become the principal of his high school, and later became the first African-American superintendent of Somerset County Public Schools. His home church was Shiloh Methodist Church, and he served on various committees in the Peninsula Delaware Conference, ordained ministry, pensions, personnel, and the Committee on Review and Apportionment. Dr. Whittington was successful in his work as the superintendent of schools for a number of years, but out of the blue, the directors of the Board of Education dismissed him with no written statement as to why. Many people said his dismissal was an act of discrimination, and it was. Whittington filed suit to Maryland State Court, and it resulted in the Board of Education, Whittington filed suit to the Maryland State Court, which resulted in the Board of Education being required to pay a penalty for their actions, and the Dr. Whittington's loss of wages. And that was money. There's thousands of dollars. He used the money he received to make contributions to his church and his community, demonstrating his continuing concern for his people. The events in the lives of those two men show that times have changed. Stephen Long did not get justice. Dr. Whittington did. But let us honor these two heroes, keep working for the good of the church and the community and all of the people who worked and served as those men did. Thank you very much.
Amen.